The jury's still out in terms of the tariffs to be imposed on steel and aluminum. And Wilbur Ross has come out to say that some allies will be exempted, not all. How does Australia feel about it? Is Australia confident it will be exempt?
Well, certainly that's the agreement that's been reached between the Prime Minister and the President. The two of them have spoken on a number of occasions, and we're confident that we have an exemption from the imposition of the steel and aluminium tariffs. And why wouldn't we? I mean, Australia is a country that has a free trade agreement with the United States. We run a trade deficit with the United States, have effectively run a trade deficit since the late 1950s. We have no tariffs or quotas imposed on US goods or items coming into Australia. So you don't get a fairer, more reciprocal or better trade deal than the trade deal that the United States has with Australia. So on that basis, plus the fact that the Prime Minister and the President have spoken, we're confident.
What repercussions may there be on trade and the global economy once those tariffs are imposed?
Well, look, there's some uncertainty, let's be frank about that, because we don't ultimately know who's going to be exempt at this stage. I mean, from what I understand, a decision is imminent, so we should have that cleared up in a relatively short order. But that notwithstanding, just say, for example, there were actions taken, the imposition of tariffs on steel from certain countries. Well, we've already had some of those countries and some of those blocs indicating that they will retaliate, that they'll put in place what they say is proportionate retaliatory action against the United States. So I think we just need to wait and see. Ultimately, any barrier to trade is going to lead to lower economic growth and lower jobs. But we just have to wait and see.
The International Institute of Finance has come out to say that it projects 3.5% growth for the global economy, but the key risk is trade.
Sure.
Do you see trade derailing the global economy in any way?
Well, trade, look, hopefully not. And trade historically has played a big role in terms of being able to pull the rest of the global economy with it. But at the moment we're seeing, in many respects, coordinated global growth. Really, the last few revisions have been upwards in terms of what they're expecting for global growth. That's a big positive. We want to ensure that trade will enable that growth potential to be realised. So we've just got to wait and see ultimately how this plays out by not only the US, but what China does, what Europe does. From Australia's perspective, we are a pro-trade nation. We are very firm believers that our economic growth is heavily dependent on access to trade. We're continuing to diversify export markets for Australia's goods and services. So, we are very forward-leaning when it comes to trade and trade engagement.
Of course, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin will be on his way to China. Yeah. What can China put on the table for Mnuchin to go back to Trump with? What do you hope to see?
That's going to be interesting. I mean, clearly China has made now on at least 2 or 3 occasions quite strong statements that China intends to continue to liberalise their economy. We've heard President Xi now say at the People's Congress, say at Davos, that he wants to ensure that China continues to open itself up for foreign investment and to open its economy to the world. I mean, later this year in November, China is having the big import expo, the first time that they will undertake that initiative on a global scale. So there seems to be action that's matching rhetoric in terms of saying we're going to open up China, we want investment. Certainly Australia's experience with China has been very positive. We've got in place a very liberal bilateral free trade agreement, and that free trade agreement sees a number of sectors where Australia has been able to invest directly into China, and that's been a big positive for our country.
China, of course, an important trading partner for Australia. Sure. Could Australia be caught in the crossfire between the US and China?
Look, I don't envisage that happening. Australia has had and continues to have really strong trade investment relationships with Japan, with Korea, with China, with the United States. I mean, consider that the 4 of them don't always see eye to eye on a range of issues. Australia, I think, though, is recognised as being an honest broker. We're consistent. People know where they stand with Australia. We're an honest broker. We don't play games. And I think that ultimately countries accept and respect that has been our approach.
Minister Ciobo, I want to touch on TPP. The US has said there is a possibility, though I think it's slight, that it may rejoin the TPP, but it wants terms to be renegotiated. How realistic is that?
Well, let me say right at the outset that Australia, and indeed I think all 11 members of the TPP would welcome the United States to come back to the table. But right now our focus is upon making sure that we can bring this agreement into effect. Each of us is working through our domestic ratification process on the TPP agreement. We envisage that should be concluded, if not late this year, then early next year. That will then bring the TPP 11 into effect, and that'll be a terrific agreement. I just don't believe there's any appetite at all from countries to say, let's put all that on hold while we renegotiate market access or chapters around a whole range of different things, including, for example, intellectual property or the suspended provisions to enable the United States to come back into the fold. So we want them, but we have an agreement. We've got to bring this agreement into effect, and then we've got to see what the US and indeed other countries, it might be Thailand, it could be the Philippines, it could be Colombia. I mean, there's a range of countries, it could be the UK, all expressing an interest in possibly...
So essentially what you're saying is that you don't see the US being part of TPP?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that in the current window of opportunity, between now and when the agreement comes into effect, which, as I said, either late this year or probably more likely early next year, I don't see opportunity for us to renegotiate vast tracts of text for that to happen. After that, there might be scope for us to relook at something, but certainly not between now and when the agreement comes into effect, because all of us have put a lot of effort into getting this agreement over the line. At one stage it looked like it was all going to blow up. We've held it together. We've put in a lot of work for this to happen.
Minister, just one final question. If TPP member nations right now aren't willing to negotiate the terms, will it be more difficult for new members to join the organization?
We're working through what the accession process will look like. Australia's working closely, in particular with Japan on this. We want new members. The fact is that everybody who joins the TPP will make that agreement even stronger. I mean, make no mistake, the TPP 11 is a very substantial agreement right now. That's part of the reason why, because we recognise it, that Australia, Japan, New Zealand and a whole host of other countries, we all put our shoulder to the wheel and we said, let's do this. This is a good agreement for trade. It applies rules across the region that everyone can live with. So we're all committed to that. If we can have other countries join, and as I said, there's quite a lot of interest, it's just going to help that agreement to get even stronger in the future.